What's going on, guys, and welcome to the Zoolab channel. As you can tell, I'm not filming in my normal spot. I'm actually going to show you guys some cool scenes that you can create on the go. I'm currently out of town for Christmas visiting my wife's family here in San Antonio. I thought it'd be a really great idea to shoot a video out here while I'm out of town to show you guys how to create a cinematic video anywhere. So I'm truly out in the wild with minimal gear. I really want this video to help some of you guys out there, maybe with the hindrance in your mind that you need all this gear and all these lights and all this amazing camera equipment to pull off great looking images. And so I wanted this video to show off how you can create cinematic videos with minimal gear. So I'll rattle off today's gear list really quick. The camera I am using is the Red Scarlet W with the Sigma 18 to 35 millimeter lens. For lighting equipment, I'm using two basic lights. I have the Amaran F22 light mat and the Nanlite Pavlotube 30Cs. So not an ideal lighting gear equipment list, but it's all I have and all I'm gonna use for these scenes. Ideally, I would have my lights on the same brand, like an Aputure or Amaran, so that I can use the Sidus Link, but I'm gonna have to make do with what I have. I have no diffusions outside of what comes with the Amaran F22 kit. So I'm gonna be using the available softbox and diffusion and grid that comes with the Amaran F22. And I'm also putting to use the additional diffusion that comes in the Amaran F22 kit. I'm actually wrapping that around my Pavlotube 30C right now, so that I can get a little bit more of a softer light hitting my face. The only other grip equipment that I brought with me were two basic light stands. They're actually pretty crappy. I almost want to just throw them over a bridge right after this shoot, just because they're a little janky. And I also brought two grip heads so that I can attach my tube lights if I wanted to, or attach the Amaran F22 if I want to as well. And another great piece of equipment that I brought with me to help me get a visual of the scene as I'm moving around and setting up lights. Since I'm doing this one solo, I have my trusty director's monitor. For the monitor, I have an Atomos Assassin. I bet you've never heard of that before. It's actually similar to a Shinobi, but it has HDMI and no SDI. It's really, really stripped down and basic, but it's still a 7-inch monitor, really clean image. And for the transmission system, I have the Hollyland Cosmos C1s. And for my focus pulling, I have the Nucleus M Nano. And for power, I'm running all of these devices on V-mount batteries. All right, and let's go ahead and jump into how I lit this scene in the shed. For my main source of key, I had rigged up, let's just say I had rigged up my Amaran F22 with some clamps that I found sitting around the house. I love this video because it is very organic and raw. I don't have a ton of grip gear. I have stuff that I found around the house. So I found some Hardy clamps that I found sitting around the house, and I clamped up my Amaran F22 to the ceiling. The shed is built out of wood, obviously, and so it had some wood beams on the top that I was able to clamp my Amaran F22 up, and I have that attached to a V-mount battery. And basically that's my main source of light. And then to kind of bring out some of the detail in the front of the shed, I tossed up my Nanlite Pavlotube on top of the shed so that I can get some nice ambience on the front door rather than it being in pitch darkness. On the side, in the back of the shed, I have a cool color contrast of teal. I put one tube on the right side at first because I only have two tubes, and one tube was sitting on top of the shed with that orange light, giving that ambience in the front door. And so the way I was able to get the teal contrast color on the other side of the shed was I had to shoot a plate. It's basically taking a portion of the image and pasting it on another image. And so I basically took that one light and I moved it to the other side of the shed and then shot another take with the light on that side. And then in post, I basically cropped in the second frame to just that one side of the shed, and I pasted it and basically overlaid it to make it look like there was lights on both sides of the shed. So that's a nice little hack for you guys out there that you don't have a ton of lights and you want to kind of balance out the image. I only had one light, but looks like two because I used the plate shot. And then as we come in tighter, I'm just basically moving around my tube lights. I had that one tube light overhead, and I basically like gaff taped that, or not even, I don't even have gaff tape. I think it was duct tape or painter's tape, something like that. So basically had some painter's tape and I taped that to the shed and I set it and forget it. Basically, I didn't really move that intensity or color temperature. I had the other tube kind of flying around, either handheld just leaned up against a piece, leaned up against some of the furniture, or I had it on a stand. And that was basically the lighting for the shed scenes. Let's go ahead and move on to the next scene. Okay, so we got two different scenes in the garage. Both scenes, I'm doing absolutely nothing. I'm painting nothing. I am creating nothing. I just have things in my hands as props, so don't make fun of me in the comments, please. I'm just using these different props and tools just to create interest in the shot. So both of these setups are pretty simple and very similar. The only thing different is that I had my tube lights in different spots. Essentially, I had my Amaran F22 overhead for both spots. I, once again, like I did in the shed, I rigged my F22 up to the ceiling using some sort of thin painter's tape. And so I was able to get that taped up to the ceiling. That's the great thing about the Amaran F22 is it's so light. Imagine me trying to rig up an Aputure Nova, something super heavy like that. No way, I would not be able to hang that up on the ceiling. So having the Amaran F22 is a huge plus as far as weight and size. And so I'm really essentially able to tape up a fully diffused, fully gridded out, nice softbox above my head and, get some really cool scenes. And I essentially have two tube lights inside the frame just to create interest and to also add a little bit of edge and key on my face. Another awesome random tool that I found laying around the house are these little Braun wands, these hand lights. And they're really bright. Oh my God, I'm blind. I threw it on this setting for one of the lights. There's another one that I used. I basically splashed that in the background on our first scene, just to add a little bit of pop and interest since I had both of my tube lights occupied in the shot. And so I splashed this guy and created a nice little interest in the back wall. So I wanted to make sure that I splashed it in a certain direction that I wasn't filling up the whole background, but just a little kiss. So I kind of angled it just right and kind of allowed it to bounce and do its thing naturally and create a nice cast on the back wall. So that was essentially it for the setup on scene number 1. Let's go ahead and move on to our second setup in the garage. Okay, for our second setup, same thing. I had the Amaran F22 overhead. Once again, taped up. This is not recommended. I do not try this at home. Definitely get a boom pole, a C-stand, and some dirt when you're hanging up the F22. Although it's really, really light, I made do with what I had out of town. And so I was able to kind of tape it up to the ceiling and made it happen. But I had that as my key and I was just kind of dialing that in. I think for the most part, it was at like 8%, so it wasn't very intense. These shots are supposed to be, mainly me working in the garage, low key, not trying to wake the family up, just working, grinding away in the garage. And once again, doing absolutely nothing, spray painting, absolutely nothing. So got the Amaran F22 overhead, I got a tube light in the back. As you can see, there's a blue cast in the back wall. The same concept as I was mentioning with the little hand lights, where I had that casted in a specific direction so that it wasn't filling up the whole wall, but kind of bouncing off of different objects in the garage and making a nice little cast of blue in the back wall. It wasn't a natural light that you would usually see on in a garage, but just a nice creative pop of color in the back. So my father-in-law has this really sweet classic car in the garage, and so I wanted to kind of show off the hood. This wasn't about the car, but I wanted to kind of show a little piece of it, so I tossed my other tube light, more of a warmer color temperature. I think it was at 2700, and I put that underneath the opening of the hood, and it kind of splashed some light and also bounced back into my back so that we can kind of create even more separation from me in the background. And there was a little practical work light on that I actually liked. In camera, it looked like this ugly green color, and I kind of liked it. It looked pretty grungy and cool, and I thought it fit in. And so I just had that on overhead. I basically accentuated that light with the Amarin F22. So I saw that little work light and I was like, okay, that's my motivation. I'm gonna have my F22 and I'm gonna motivate my F22 by that little work light. And so I kept that on. I threw some painter's tape. Again, I used that painter's tape. Ideally, I would use some gaff tape. I kind of blocked half of the light so that it wasn't spilling all over the scene, but only on a piece of the back wall. So it kind of added a little texture. So I'm always looking in my image for light, dark, light, dark. You want that contrast of light all throughout your image. You don't want the whole scene to be flooded with light, and you also don't want the whole scene to be in pitch darkness. So having little pockets of light, little pockets of interest is going to go a long way in creating beautiful images. Guys, that's a wrap. As you can see, I have also an interview setup right here where I'm at with what I have on the go. As you saw, the other talking head in the shed, get it, that rhymes. Anyways, I was able to create a cool interview setup there, as well as creating a cool interview setup right here in the garage. Essentially for this talking head, I have my Amarin F22 45 degrees from me, giving me a nice key side, and then kind of allowing it to gradually fall off on this side of my face. And I have two tube lights that are on both sides of me. They're basically pointing up in the ceiling at 100% at 2700 Kelvin. And that's giving a nice warm tone to the sides of the image, since this part of the garage was pitch black. So I wanted to add some ambience to the garage. Back there, I have basically the work light on. I just cranked that guy on. I had the option of flipping on all the lights back there or just putting that on. And I decided to go just one work light instead of all the house lights, because the house lights would fill every shadow and nook and cranny, and I wanted to just have one light on so that I can have some nice contrast and fall off of light in the background, and creating some cool shadows in the front by the car. And that's it, guys. That's the setup for this talking head in the garage. I wanted this video to highlight different ways to create cool scenes and also interviews, not just B-roll scenes, but interviews wherever you go with what you have. Hope this video helps all of you guys that are watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you guys a ton, and we'll see you in the next one.